Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast. Presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh from MitsuTimes. Today, my guest is Bailey Ipock. He is the owner and driver of easily one of the sweetest Evos I've seen. He's been doing all kinds of time attack racing. How you doing today, Bailey?
I'm doing good, Josh. How are you, my man?
I'm great. I should also say a TikTok star as well. The username's Ipocalypse, right?
Yes, the Apocalypse.
The Apocalypse, okay. Wasn't sure if you wanted to shout out that one or the race car dad one. So
that's just like a underlying nickname kind of thing. But yeah, so the TikTok and the Instagram are the Apocalypse.
I love watching the Rocket League. I've never played it myself, but it's fun to watch other people do it.
It's entertaining. I suck at it.
So, Bailey, tell us about your Time Attack Evo as it sits now, because I know there's all kinds of people out there that are probably interested in not only your car, but in this sport itself.
Well, as it sits now, it currently sits engineless. Last year, I was able to, in 4 laps, sneak a podium of 3rd place in enthusiast class, but I did, in that, I hurt the crank bearings in the block. It was my own fault. I overdrove the car. I went for almost 3 hot laps in a row, and the oil just got too hot. Oil temp hit I caught it at about 250 and then started to slow down, but it ended up on the cool down, just trying to cool it down, it skyrocketed to 280 and the oil thinned out and I hurt the bearings.
Damage had been done at that point, huh?
Yeah, so that was on me. I made a mistake. I overdrove the car. I red misted. So as it sits now, though, it's got 14 out of 510 coilovers. It's got a 9 laps racing wing. It does have a custom front splitter built by me with the professional awesome quick disconnect mounts. That whole project took damn near a good 30 hours on a weekend.
Shoot.
Like a 3-day weekend to, measure it, get it. But, I have it on a pole cable system where it drops the splitter off within literally a second.
Oh, nice.
Now, what is about to go in, and I actually just started on it yesterday, I am going to go to a 2.2-liter stroker in the Evo, and the previous turbo setup was a it was a spicy little stock frame, 20G, 3-inch anti-surge, and the key sauce, in my opinion, was the 16G Evo 6.5 TME titanium hot side, which I was able, a guy out of California scoured for 6 months, had a source, and was able to get one of those reverse rotation wheels out of some dude's warehouse. So he built me this little spicy turbo, and I know you've probably seen, I'm a huge advocate for spool, since I also autocross. Early spool is necessary for my life, and I was able to get 434 foot-pounds of torque at 3,900 RPMs and pretty much 500 horsepower at redline on that 20G.
Wow! And
it did competitively well for autocross, and it did pretty decent for time attack too. I did win a pro solo. The car ran pretty good for about a year, and I won that pro solo, and then also I podiumed at Super Lap, so it was kind of doing good in both at the time.
So, Bailey, if you don't mind, I want to start off with the differences between time attack and circuit racing.
Okay, so time attack is really just, you're more of racing against the clock. You're not going against people for position.
Gotcha.
So really, realistically, what happens is, you go out. They send one car out, and then they wait, 15, 20 seconds, and they send another car out, and they kind of spread you all out on track. Okay. So to try and all you really are doing is just essentially driving against yourself for a faster time. Yeah, sometimes you do pass people, and there are point buys, and people are on cooldowns, and then if you're on a cooldown, you get offline to try and let someone who is potentially on a hot still get a clean run. But yeah, so it's just Time attack is pretty expensive as well in itself. I mean, it can be. It definitely is. But compared to wheel to wheel, I think it's maybe not as expensive, and it's a less of a hassle because you don't have to get like wheel to wheel racing license. You don't have to go to a competition school. Not all of the classes require a big 8-point weld-in cage and stuff. It's the barrier to entry for time attack is a little bit less than when it comes to like wheel to wheel racing.
Okay. So Bailey, what is it that got you into time attack in the first place?
I started autocrossing in 2015, and I guess it's just kind of natural progression. I started autocrossing in 2015, did it pretty, every single month. And then probably about a year and a half after autocrossing, I did my first track day.
Okay.
And then I probably did anywhere like in the next 2 years or so, 8 to 10 track days. And then it was like, okay, now it's time, now. And I had heard about Global Time Attack. And so I did my first Global Time Attack in 2017. And that was in my 300 horsepower Subaru WRX wagon. I ran limited class. I was extremely outgunned because I was just on too wide of tires to fit into enthusiast class at the time.
Okay.
And some 600-700 horsepower GTR put like 14 seconds on me or something ridiculous. This was at Auto Club Speedway on the Roval, so the NASCAR Roval.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. So, Bailey, I've always been told by circuit drivers that autocrossers make good circuit drivers, but circuit drivers don't make good autocrossers. What's your take on that?
That is 100% true. That is, generally, it's tough. A lot of people don't necessarily do both autocross and track, and the amount of people, and there are people who do it, but generally most people have a different car for each.
Mm-hmm.
So I can probably count on one hand the amount of people, including myself, who try to use the exact same car to be competitive at autocross and on track. And it's very lit because it's just people believe there's different spring rate setups, there's different just like for a road course, spooling 4,000 to 5,000 is much more manageable compared to, but autocross, you really need that low RPM punch out of the corner speed. So, but yes, there is definitely track guys always like to hate on autocross guys, but autocross guys can literally they learn car control at lower speeds. But they're pushing. I think they push the limits a little bit more.
Okay.
And kind of at those lower speeds and safeness, and then when they go to the track, they actually get faster than majority of them. Within at least beyond beginners. They kind of gravitate to intermediate level pretty quick on their first track day.
Gotcha. Okay, Bailey. So what was it that made you choose the Evo platform, moving from your Subaru wagon for this type of racing?
Man, realistically, the barrier to entry for power, because time attack does require power, and I knew the cast iron 4G63 block was much easier to make 400 or 500 horsepower out of compared to any EJ. You know what I mean? So yeah, and Evos are a little bit more expensive to acquire. Like in the beginning, they have a higher cost to attain one, but it's actually much cheaper to make power in Evo once you have it compared to a Subaru.
Gotcha. Yeah, after I don't know if you've seen it, but after watching Donut Media's recent high-low car, I'm not sure I'll ever touch EJ ever in my life now.
Yeah, I made a TikTok about that did pretty well and got like a couple, like 200,000 views they just, I don't completely hate Subarus. I learned a lot. I built that Subaru for 5 years, and it definitely taught me a lot. It's a good starter car for sure.
Yeah, and
they do have the potential to be competitive in what you build them to. But I personally believe, go ahead, do your full suspension, do your aero, do all your reliability mods, and keep it at like 350 horsepower, and just beat the ever living piss out of it, and it will treat you well. But the moment you try to make even on fully built blocks, 400 or 500, it just tends to seem you're on borrowed time.
So you think they just turned it up too much?
What I think Donut did wrong is one, they didn't do a catch can until their last episode. You know, I'm a huge advocate for managing your PCV system. I believe if you don't manage your PCV system, it will actually increase oil starvation because you pretty much have crankcase pressure trapping, you know, a couple quarts of oil in your head. And that's just less quarts that are in your pan.
Right.
Then as you're driving around, you know, now your pan only has, you know, maybe 3 quarts in it instead of the 5 or 6 it should have. And now you're sloshing around, you're carrying G's, and it just, you know, and I don't think they did the baffled pan till later in their episodes. They just a couple things that if you're going to track drive any car, it kind of just that is like the gold standard that you need to take care of. You need to have a solid catch can setup. You need to have baffled oiling system. You know, you need to have oil starvation preventive maintenance in place first before you even really start to go and send it on the track.
Yeah, they're trying to go back now and say they had a boiled or a baffled oil pan since day one, but I find that hard to believe.
I don't think they did, to be honest. I mean, granted, I know what they look like, especially if you have the new IEG one. It has like the oil cooling fins on the bottom.
Yeah.
That would be easy to spot. And like people are like, oh, they had a catch can. I know what a catch can looks like in a Subaru. I know whether you have the corner mount, the top mount, or whether you have the cheap ass one that mounts to the oil cap, which that one's useless. But I avidly watched in their videos for a catch can, and I never saw it until like I didn't even bother watching the final episode or two. But apparently, people told me they added it then.
So, Bailey, we know the Evo obviously as a rally legend. We know it is very capable in drag racing. What are the strengths and weaknesses when it comes to taking the Evo around the circuit?
Well, unfortunately, you know, the biggest weakness in the Evo for circuit driving is actually also oil starvation, due to where the pickup is at. Since the pickup is at the right hand of the block, when you do long right hand sweepers, you know, G'd out sweepers, all the oil picks up, goes to the left, and oil starve. And I actually have oil starved one stock block before this one as well. But that was kind of on me. I was on sticky Yokohama AO52 tires, stock oil pan. I didn't have a baffled oil pan at the time, you know, and it so that one was on me. Both of them have been on me. The second time I had a baffled oil pan, you know, I had the Kigley HLA, I had the good oil, you know, fresh oil chain, everything. I had the oil pressure gauge. It just, the second time was my fault for overdriving the car and not letting it cool down when it needed to.
Gotcha. As far as the strengths, Bailey, you think it's just the amount of bolt-on aftermarket parts?
The strength of the car, man, it just... the power just feels so raw, and really what is the word I'm looking for? It's just so, once you have it set up right, it's easy to drive. Honestly, it rips and it handles well. The all-wheel drive system is, you know, I really am a fan of that. That is another weakness, is the ACD pump, as most people know, right? Because that thing is so close to the ground. It can corrode really easy. Corrosion from salt and water, can make its way into the pump and kind of ruin the seals in it. Mm-hmm. I had to, you know, man, that was like a good year of trial and error, you know, testing things, swapping out sensors, swapping out relays, rebuilding the pump. I ended up rebuilding the pump probably 30, 40 times.
Oh, wow.
Just different, you know, okay, let me do 341, 134, 415, you know what I mean? And just different combinations of building the pump, because there is like a really old YouTube video on it, but he's doing it on a JDM pump. It's shaped a little bit differently, and he doesn't go super in depth. Now, you know, I know how to test the electric motor. I know how to change out the little rollers in the electric motor. I know how to pressure test the housing. I know how to test the sensor. I went down every avenue to like really diagnose these pumps. I've successfully built like 3 or 4 of them, and I have failed rebuilding another 4 or 5, because once you get them open, the corrosion is just outrageous. And it's like, it's hard to tell from the outside of these ACD pumps when you're looking at them. Like, oh, it looks okay, but if you can get those two Allen heads off, and once you get in it, man, most of them are good, especially like the ones that are like in the salt belt or anything.
Right.
They're donezo.
So would a non-ACD transfer case even be an option for the type of racing that you do?
Yeah, people do it, but people generally favor the ACD for motorsports, in my opinion, just because you do have that torque vectoring of the ACD pump, kind of setting the power front to rear. I guess it is considered more ideal, but there's plenty of people, especially guys with Evo 8s, who are out there with non-ACD who race it as well.
Gotcha. Okay. So, Bailey, what was this blue Evo like when you got it?
A turd. It was an absolute turd. So what was it? 2019. I picked it up, and the guy had bought it off of someone else. He took the built block out of it. Pretty much took all the aftermarket parts out. Took the 6-point cage out of it.
Wow.
Sold out that stuff. Threw in an old crappy 115K OEM block. And just pretty much slapped the thing together. I did pick it up for $18,500 in 2019, so pretty good price.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
It was a turd. I guess it did have a clean title, so that was nice. But he was like, "Oh yeah, this thing's making 420. I know what 400 plus should feel like," and I get in it and drive it, and it was just ass. It was like hitting like a wall, and so I ended up digging into it. It had some things routed wrong. He had like the 3-port set up like if he was running an external wastegate and not a internal wastegate. And then once I fixed that, then it like hit like a red line wall at like 4,500. So I ended up having to go get the car retuned, and which I kind of already figured would happen because the previous block was on it before, and I'm sure it was tuned with all those parts, and he just threw a stock one in it. The transmission broke after 6 months, like after a couple launches at autocross. So I've already replaced the motor. I replaced the transmission. I did get a TRE, the 12-plate rear diff.
Okay.
I had to rebuild the ACD pump and fix that. The only thing I didn't touch was the transfer case, which I will be doing a one-way. I got a M Factory one-way diff that's going in there on the new setup.
So you've pretty much re-engineered this whole car, top to bottom.
Yeah, it's just about everything.
So Bailey, what different setups have you had on it besides the 6.5 TME that we were talking about?
That's it.
You're going to the 2.2 stroker. That's pretty much it so far?
Yeah. So in original form when I got it, it did come with T and coilovers, some junky coilovers, and it had a couple bolt-ons, downpipe and some beat up intercooler and stuff. Nothing crazy. And it first tune on E85, it made like 360, 330. That was like the first iteration of the Evo. Then I went through, I did the ETS intercooler, I did the ETS speed density intake, and then dual port internal wastegate, Turbo Smart IW75, Turbo Smart, race port blow off valve, kind of all the fancy bits. And that's when in the second iteration on the 20G it made, the 434 and the 500 horsepower.
Okay. So not too many different setups. I mean, I guess there's really no need to really strive too far from the close to stock setup.
Yeah. And so in the final form, which I wasn't ready to do yet, I did just go to Super Lap Battle. It was just this last weekend, and the enthusiast class record was reset by damn near almost 2 seconds from a 228.8 or somewhere in that ballpark down to a 226.8. And I did chat with the guy, and he pretty much had like a 600 horsepower 370 Nismo Z. Okay. COTA is a really big horsepower track, so for my next setup, I already have the manifold. I have a full race twin scroll manifold that I I'm looking to put a Borg Warner EFR 7670 on it.
Okay.
And for enthusiast class, you do have to run 93, and you can run up to 100 octane. You make a little bit more sauce on 100 octane, but the car runs hotter.
Right.
So I'm looking to do the 7670 on the 100 octane potentially for next year with the 2.2 stroker, hoping to maybe make 550. But this is the thing about these EFRs. I know a lot of people really favor Garrett, but the thing I love about the EFR is, one, it's twin scroll. I personally am a huge advocate for faster spool. I believe twin scrolls spool faster, and then also they have a titanium hot side. So just like the turbo I have now, I actually built just so I can make it like a little mini Borg Warner turbo.
Gotcha.
And I got really serious results, solid results out of that. I did so happen to find like 2 really old dyno sheets on a 2.3 liter and 2.4 liter, and they were fully spooled. On the 2.4, it was fully spooled by 3,500 RPMs at like 550 foot-pounds of torque.
Wow.
And on the 2.3, it was fully spooled at like 4,000 RPMs at like same thing, like 550 foot-pounds of torque.
Huh.
So if I can still keep my early spool so I can still enjoy autocross them, that is the goal. If it ends up not, I will be on a 2.2. If I end up, spooling a little bit later than I like, it might just become a dedicated track car, and I will no longer autocross it.
Gotcha.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by the Mitsubishi Owners Club. Mitsubishi Owners Club is a Facebook community of over 7,000 members from all across the globe. The community shares builds, pictures, stories, and sales for every Mitsubishi model imaginable. Local and regional events are posted, as well as news about upcoming models or announcements. Join the club on Facebook at Mitsubishi Owners Club.
So, Bailey, I wanted to say, since you were talking about that stroker, I've noticed a lot of the circuit track guys, autocross guys, they run the stroker. Why is that?
Well, I mean, it's I know a lot of drag guys, they like to run stocked yard. They to a long rides, right? So
right.
They can run lower compression, just massive amounts of boost, right? I guess it just kind of depends on what you're building the car for, but most autocross and track guys, adding that displacement, it does, increases spool. If I'm coming around out of a corner at 30, 40 miles an hour and I'm fully spooled up by 4,000 RPMs, it's just going to give me a higher advantage by the time I reach the end of that next straight, a little bit more top mile per hour at the end of that straight compared to, say, I come out of the corner, maybe I lag for a couple of seconds, and then it's finally spooled up. It definitely helps coming out of getting that punch out of the corner and carrying more straight down the speed or straight line speed.
So it's making up those very valuable seconds where you would otherwise be in turbo lag.
Exactly.
Okay.
I know drag cars, it doesn't really matter, right? You guys are two-stepping. It doesn't matter if your power band is from 5,000 to 7,500 because that's where you're going to stay the whole time because you're two-stepping it, you're freaking anti-lagging it, and you're just already there and leaving the line.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So, Bailey, looking back on it, would you still go back and buy this Evo all over again and go through the setups it's gone through?
I would. I really enjoy the car, and I would consider myself more of a better builder than a better driver. My driving still needs work. I could use a little bit of maturity on the track, not red misting and knowing when not to push the car to its limit. But I really enjoy problem solving and, kind of like just like all the time and effort I put into fixing the ACD pump. And then, because a lot of people, like, oh, well, you can't fix the ACD pump or ACD, just go non-ACD. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's like a very standard thing. And then same with a lot of people, they're like, oh, well, if you can't fix oil starve, just go dry sump. And so that's why I kind of did a lot of research with my catch can setup. I got the brand new pan from Infinite Evo. I'm sure you've heard of the guy Mike out of New Zealand who's making those gold pans now. I got my hands on one of those. Mine was like number 9, one of the first 10.
Heck yeah.
And that's supposed to really help. I'm still a strong advocate for that's something I'm working on, not being forced to go dry sump, because that's just, that's really expensive. For a lot of average guys, that's just a really big pill to swallow.
For sure.
So it could not work out. I mean, potentially, but Mike dropped a good chunk of money into research. He went through 3 or 4 iterations of that pan. He did some testing, and his pan and the right-hand sweepers held like 30 to 40 more PSI over the race fab pan.
Wow.
So it looks extremely promising. Other track guys in the community are already running it, so I think it's a really good step, like a high medium step before going dry sump.
Sounds like that Borg Warner's going to appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly.
So Bailey, what would you say it is about this car that motivates you to keep pushing it?
About the car, or is it about me? I think we all just naturally chase our motorsports guys. We just chase progression, right? You know, I mean, we're never fully happy. We always want to go faster. We always want to knock more time off the clock. You always want to just continue to get better and better, and that sometimes that comes at a cost of your financial well-being, your emotional well-being. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've definitely seen I've seen some good times. Pretty much the first 4 or 5 years were really good to me, but these last 3 or 4 years have been a really tough challenge for me to continue going.
So you think it's not just the trying to do a better time, but also the challenge of getting back out there and making this thing go faster?
Essentially, yeah. You know, a lot of us don't have that. I mean, I feel like if I just stopped, like I'd be quitting on myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and
sure.
You know, and that's just something you have to live with forever. Realistically, I'd rather give my best effort and fail than not give an effort at all.
Yep, I agree 100%. So Bailey, have you had any other Mitsubishis in your life, or has this been the one?
No, I've actually had 2.
Okay.
And this is my very first Evo, was an Evo 8 MR. I was pretty fresh in the Navy. I did like a 9-month tour around the world on the Abraham Lincoln, and I saved up, 20 G's pretty much. I got off, as a dumb, young, irresponsible airman, and I was like, oh, I'm buying an Evo.
Heck yeah.
And I bought the Evo, and it was the first car I learned to drive manual on. With a broken hand. And I love the car. It was like Apex Silver.
Oh.
But I kind of got to like a point though where, car payment was like $200, insurance was like $200,
right.
But the gas, I was driving from like Newport News, Virginia to Hampton, Virginia every day, like 45 miles a day, and I was spending like $400 $500 a month in gas.
Man.
So it was like costing me damn near $900 a month to own this Evo as like this baby airman in the Navy, and I was like trying to pay for rent, and it just like it got to this point like I just can't afford this car anymore.
Right.
So I sold it. I hated that I sold it, but I told myself I would always get another one, and it took about 9 years before I bought my second one. I did used to have also a daily driver as like just a little Mitsubishi Galant. Nothing crazy, but it was solid and reliable.
Yeah. I bet the MR was pretty sweet though.
It was sweet.
That's cool. So Bailey, if someone out there is listening, they want to get their Evo, they want to get their DSM into time attack racing, what advice would you give them?
Well, I'm a huge advocate for autocross, right? But autocross rules and time attack rules do not jive together well. You could do a couple things in autocross rule that could put you in a pretty steep class. So realistically, I guess it's tough. Autocross is much easier on a person. It's safer. It's a safer environment to go rip it. I do believe you can kind of push the limits more and learn more about yourself in the car than maybe going to a track, because there are walls. You know what I mean? There's going off corners. You can hit the grass. You can smack the wall. There's a little bit higher risk when you go to the track when you're just starting out. But definitely, do something within your budget and just really just like suspension, wheels, brakes, tires. and get a reliable tow setup. That is something I would have. Damn, I didn't get a reliable tow setup till literally like 2 years ago, and I've been doing this for almost 9.
Jeez.
So, and the first time when I went to run Global Time Attack at Fontana, I actually blew up third gear in the Subaru on a downshift. Thankfully, the teeth did not make contact with any of the other teeth and jam up the gears, and I drove it 3 hours home, skip shifting.
No kidding.
From 2nd to 4th through traffic down to San Diego.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I ended up doing like a different transmission swap on it, but yeah, that was sketchy. And a reliable tow setup it's just such a nice peace of mind, and it doesn't have to be like some fat crazy diesel. You can get yourself like just some type of 2500, your Toyota Tundra, or something, even if it's a gasser, and just that way you can make sure you get yourself to and from the track. Go buy a flatbed trailer for $2,000, $3,000.
Right. So Bailey, what would you say your goals are for this year with this car?
Well, I just want to get it running.
Yeah.
I want to get it running. I would like to do a few shakedowns. There's only one potential event on the schedule, and that is Ascent, which is like the 50K competition that is happening at Colorado at PPIR.
Okay.
I believe that's July timeframe. I got invited to that a couple months ago.
Heck yeah.
They've reached out. That is potentially on the schedule, but realistically, just get the car running, get a few shakedowns. I would like to make it to COTA at least once this year. I would like to make MSR maybe 2 to 3 times, and make COTA at least once, and just go shit on my PB at COTA, because COTA is my current nemesis right now. I have not successfully made it through an entire weekend at COTA in the last 4 years, or in the 4 years I ran. Yeah.
Pretty brutal track then.
It is. It doesn't compare. Like, it's easy for someone on the outside in, like, but a good lap time at COTA, or for the time attack drivers, is like a 2:30. Most average tracks are anywhere between like a 130 to a 150. Some are even under the 130 limit. So you're out there going full tilt for almost double an average, one lap for an average track. And, things get hotter, the brakes fade easier. You're coming down that back straight anywhere, depending on your power level, from 130 to 170. And then you just slam on the brakes, and come down to pretty much second gear for this like 30-degree left turn. There is 5 or 6 sections on the track where you break 100 plus.
Wow.
So COTA is a different animal, but it just mechanically tasking on a car much more than most tracks.
Yeah. It must be just an amazing track, because they just added it to the NASCAR circuit a few years ago, and already it seems like a lot of the drivers' favorite track to go to now.
Yeah, they just take care of it so well. Like it can be bumpy here and there in a couple spots, like in some of the hot braking zones, like coming up to turn 1, coming down the hill towards the back straight. There's some bump, but like compared to other tracks, it is pretty flat and really smooth. It's very well maintained, and it's just going to COTA is like a completely different feel than just going to like your average track day.
That's awesome. Good stuff. I'm glad that there's still, really good tracks out there that are taking care of the drivers. So, Bailey, what would you say are the long-term goals with this car?
Well, that's tough to say, but the future, in the next 2-year goal, right? Get the car running, get it set up, maybe make anywhere between 500 to 600 on it, and I would like to go and make a shot at the enthusiast class record.
Okay.
But part of enthusiast class, once you win, you only get 1 year to defend. So say next year if I get second or third, I can keep competing. So like, since I took third last year, I can keep competing in enthusiasts if I get second or third. But if you get first, then after that, you only get 1 year to defend your title, and then you have to move to street class. And the jump to street class is pretty ridiculous, but you do get to switch over to 200 treadwear tires, the Yokohama 52. You can switch over to E85. You can gut the B-pillar back. You can take some weight out of the car. There are things to be done. So realistically, just be as competitive as I can and enthusiast for the next 2 years. If I win, then, do the switch over to E85 and then probably just aim for top, maybe top 5 to 8 for street class, because I just don't have the budget to chase the street class record at all. Like, man, the Jackie Ding, Amir Benetu, they both cracked 213s in the car. Jackie's made like 780. Amir's was making 600 in a pretty much 2,000-pound go-kart NSX. Like, I'm not entirely sure if the Evo has. I believe it has, low 220 potential in street form, but nowhere is it touching close to those 213s.
Yeah, you really need a shop behind you for something like that.
Yeah, or just take 1,000 pounds out of the car, which isn't going to happen. Right. So,
yep, not when we see like fully gutted carbon drag Evos at 2,000 pounds. I mean, that's tricky to do as is.
Yeah, exactly. The all-wheel drive system in those things are just so damn heavy.
Yeah. So I know you talked already, Bailey, about the event that you plan to hit this year. Are there any in 2024? I know you already talked about one that you're hoping to go to. Are there any more next year that you plan to hit?
I mean, the main one is just Super Lap Battle, right? That's a pretty expensive budget just to get to that. It's damn near, $1,700 just to enter the event, and then if you want a garage, like another $500, and hotel and gas.
Right.
And it's a pretty expensive event to get to. That is the main one on the schedule for 2024.
Okay.
Sometimes I think Grid Life comes to NOLA. That would be cool. That's I think like 8 hours for me. That's not too bad if I was to attend something like that, or if they're running that Ascent again at PPAR.
Yeah, that PPR track is super nice. It'd be really cool to see some Evos out there.
Yeah, I've also heard it's kind of sketchy. I haven't personally seen people on it, but I heard there's like a corner or two that you kind of come in blind and you really got to get your shit right.
Oh, wow. I've only seen just some what do you call it, helmet cams and some GoPros and stuff, people going around there.
Okay.
So it's really hard to tell really what
from a GoPro.
Right, yeah. So Bailey, we talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but let's where can people follow you and keep track of this Evo? What's your social media accounts?
Okay, so I mean, first and foremost, the big one is my YouTube, Bang, and the number 4 Buck Racing. I just started really trying to work on it in the last 6 months, taking it more seriously. That's where I'll have full Evo rebuild content.
Oh, okay.
Track day stuff, kind of overviews, product reviews. Just kind of the more in depth. I'm kind of limited when it comes to TikTok and Instagram. To like 1 minute to 2 minutes kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you want to follow me on Instagram or TikTok, it is _Ipocalypse, IPOCKALYPSE.
Well, Bailey, at the end, I always give people a chance to give a shout-out or a thanks to anybody who's helped them get where they are, get their car where it is. Is there anybody that you want to give a shout-out to?
I definitely, a shout-out to Fortunato. I do have a partial sponsorship with them. They gave me a deal on the Fortunato 510s. Shout-out to 9 Lives Racing. We got a good deal going for my wing as well. Johnny's a real top-notch dude. Great budget aero, for the price. And then obviously the biggest shout out is my wife, right? She's my biggest supporter. She's there's been times where I'm down and I think about giving up, and she continues to help me push through, and she helps take care of sometimes, a lot of the stuff around the home life, so I can continue to grind on this car stuff.
Heck yeah, love that. Awesome, Bailey. Well, hey, thanks for coming on here. I love watching you interact daily on social media, so it's great to get a chance to talk to you, and I can't wait to see your car back in action, man. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Have a good one, my man.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.